Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. My name is Patrick Lyons. I'm one of your co-hosts here with my friends, my colleagues, my mentors, each of them in different ways, Leb Tannenbaum and Patsy Freeman. Welcome to you both. How are you today?
I am well.
As am I.
And happy to see Mark again.
Yes. Yeah. So we are excited. Listeners, we are excited to bring back to our podcast today, Mark Williams. Now, Mark is a leader in the world of financial planning and insurance, and he's currently the president and CEO of Brokers International, which is one of the country's largest and most influential insurance marketing organizations. He's the author of Lead, Don't Manage, which is a guide to cultivating successful and effective leaders at every level of an organization. He's also the host of the Mileage May Vary podcast, which is a podcast with helpful tips and real-life lessons for finding new ways forward, because there's never only just one way of doing things. And Mark holds the distinction of being the very first guest on this podcast, way back in episode 8, when the only people who were listening were our moms. So, Mark, on behalf of all of our moms, welcome back to the Frustrated CEO podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm super thrilled to get a second invite. So yeah,
Yes.
an encore presentation. Thanks very much.
Yes, you are CEO tested, mom approved, I think is how that goes. Mark, I mentioned Lead, Don't Manage. What's the difference?
Great question. So I'll give a little bit of background. The reason that I wrote the book, I am 36 years. Wow, 36 years. Either managing somebody or leading a team or managing a team. And throughout my career, I have realized that a lot of middle management doesn't get much instruction or coaching at all. I have found that if you're with a company and the company starts to grow, and let's say you do job X, and your department starts to get bigger and they need more people in your department. And because you're the first or you've been there the longest, they hire someone new and, hey, we're going to put them under you. You're going to teach them a job and you become a manager. So you're really just thrown into managing with no guidebook, no instruction, no nothing. So the biggest difference, so that's the reason for the book. It was really to teach people some management skills. Right? Things that happen in their careers that they don't have any tutelage for. And I think there is a big difference between leading and managing. I think when you lead, you are determining the direction, right? I think about my business and where my business is going to be 3, 4, 5 years from today. What does the industry look like? And I'm trying to bring the company to my vision. When you manage, you're managing that vision, right? So you're not creating the vision. That would be more of a leader's job. I need to make sure everyone understands my vision, sees my vision, and ultimately starts rowing in that direction. So I view managing as doing the day-to-day, doing the work, and leading is more, hey, follow me because you believe that where I'm going and you agree with where I'm going. And so you follow me. So I become the leader there. So I would say that's probably from a 30,000 foot view. That's probably the biggest difference between leading someone and managing. So you've got, I'm not a huge sports fan, but you've got the owner of the team and maybe even the president of the team. And that's the person that sees, hey, what's the team need to look like 3, 4, 5 years from now? The coach does day to day. The coach is on the field, watching the plays, changing the plays, changing the players, actually managing the team and managing the game. I think it's much different. And so I think that hopefully that answers your question, Patrick. I think that's the biggest difference.
It does. I've had the pleasure of walking the halls of Brokers International with you, and actually being in the room with you as you and your team developed strategy. So I say that because a lot of people write books about things that they may talk about but don't walk out. I've seen you walk that out. I've seen you hold the vision, cast the vision, compel your team toward being more visionary in that room, and then handing it off to really talented leaders in your organization to do the execution of it. And I see, as I said, we've walked the halls of Brokers International together. you are absolutely a leader there. Again,
Well, thank you
not
very
in
much.
title, not just in title. Every CEO has the title, but you are revered and seen as a leader. And I say that not to, boost your ego, but more for the listeners, like, okay, pay attention, because here's somebody that I can tell you walks the talk.
Well, thank you. I'll also add to that leading is often in my behavior. So certain things come naturally to certain people. And I am a very gregarious person. I'm very outgoing. And I am very interested in my employees and the health of my employees and what they do at home and what they do on the weekends and who they are as people.
Mhm.
I have a great management team. They're great at what they do, but for a lot of them, they're not that type of person. So I also would submit that I lead in behavior. I want them to, as best as they can, be themselves, but show a little bit of leadership when it comes to interest in your employees, concern for your employees. Not only are they getting the job done, because that's the management, that's the work part of it, right? Is the job getting done? But I believe that you have happy employees when people care about each other, when people are concerned with each other, when you remember small things about your employees. And so I do try to set the example in my behavior. And I would submit that that's leading as well. Although we don't think about that in the corporate world, it's always, hey, this is the vision and this is where the company needs to be. It's also about behavior. And, lots of companies have core values. We live and breathe our core values. We hire to them. We manage to them. The core values mean something to us. And that is an example that I think I set, or at least I try to set. And so it's not only leading the company, it's leading in behavior, it's leading in the decisions that we make, making sure that they're morally correct, that they're ethically correct, yada, yada, yada. I think you get the picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a lot more than just managing the day-to-day and leading the vision of the company. It encompasses a lot more than that.
So I'll jump in before my colleagues do, because I know we all have good questions for you. Before a listener thinks, yeah, Mark, that's awesome, but I have too many employees to get to know them all and worry about what they do outside of here. How many employees do you have at Brokers International?
Yeah, and that is a great challenge. So we have about 150 employees currently.
Yeah.
And we've grown from when I first started at the company, we had about 85 or 90. So we've grown considerably. And it does become a challenge for sure. In fact, I literally was just at the home office this past weekend, and we've hired about 12 new people in the last 4 months. And number one, I make it a point to go and introduce myself so that at least they see a face and they put a name with a face.
Right.
I'm the CEO. They should know that. But it does become a challenge, right? And so as best I can, and I travel a lot, so I'm not at the office as often as I used to be. So it is a challenge. I do the best I can. And I think people see that, right? And so if I haven't seen you, or it's been 3 or 4 months and I only met you once, oftentimes I'm given the grace, oh yeah, you might not remember me, but I do try to remember one small nugget about most people that I meet. And I think people can do that. Of course, if you're CEO of a company that has 30,000 employees, there's no expectation of that. But I think the employees that you see on a day-to-day basis, even if I fly Delta all the time, they probably have 40 or 50,000 employees. I'm sure that the CEO in his office may run into the same 20 or 30 or 40 people, maybe because they're in that office. I don't expect him to fly to some other city and know all the employees, but I think the ones that he surrounds himself with on a day-to-day basis, I think that sets the same example.
Well, we had the pleasure of working with some senior leaders in the transportation industry. I mean, thousands. And they talked about going out and meeting the bus drivers and meeting the maintenance workers and what a difference it made. So I think that effort goes a long way.
Yeah, 100% agree. Even making just the effort to do that,
Yeah.
especially in a company that is that kind of employee, that number of employees, when you take a day out of every quarter or every 4 months or 5 months to visit the frontline employee, I think it does make a difference.
Yeah.
Mark, do you hold also some leadership forums where you can get personal, or you can talk about mental health, or you can, talk further about the vision, so you can reach more people? It's
interesting. I do quite a few things, actually. Well, first of all, we have every quarter we have an all company meeting. That isn't an intimate setting, however. That's just 150 employees all in a room. However, I do several things. I have bi-weekly one-on-ones with each member of my staff.
Mhm.
So we're meeting face to face. We also have quarterly planning meetings and annual planning meetings where we're planning for the next year. And that is simply with my staff, which is about 8. And we are in a very intimate setting, and we do discuss the welfare of not only themselves, but their downlines. We
Mhm.
actually go through a process every single quarter of discussing overall the performance of the teams. For example, do you have a superstar that needs to be recognized, or are we concerned that that superstar may be looking elsewhere? How have we taken care of those superstars? Do we have employees that are on performance plans? Maybe they're not working as well as they should. And what's the reason for the performance plan? Several times in my career, I've had really difficult times at home. I went through a divorce, for example. And I'll readily admit that during that 5, 6, 7-month time period, I was not 100% at work when I was at work. That's just being honest.
Mhm.
I was preoccupied with outside world.
Mhm.
I lost my dad a few months ago, literally 2 months ago. I was preoccupied with my dad for the past 3 or 4 months, without a doubt. I
Mhm.
don't think my work suffered, but I wasn't giving it 100% if I'm truly honest, if I'm
Mhm.
truly honest about that. I'm number one, transparent about it. So people knew, hey, I'm dealing with some things at home. I may not express exactly what I'm doing. I may just say I'm dealing with some things at home that are personal and I need some grace. This is right. And I think we need some grace with our employees. They're people and they go through things just like we do. And if you understand that, you might understand why their performance has taken a dip. You also might give them a little leeway. So yeah, it's a very big concern of mine. I'm a big believer in mental health. I've seen a therapist for a number of years. I'm not shy about saying that. It has done wonders for both myself and my family. And so yeah, I think mental health up until recently was really overlooked. We expect so much of our employees today, and we can talk for hours on this, but technology has created a 24/7 environment for many employees.
Yep.
Our customers reach out to my employees in the evenings. They're texting them in the morning. They're sending emails. They're on social media.
Mhm.
We have these computers that are generating faster and faster results, and yet we're not hiring more people. So we're expecting more from our people. So burnout is real, and mental health. I talk about it a lot on my podcast, and I talk a lot about it personally on LinkedIn. I take breaks every day. I go for a walk every day simply to clear my head. So hopefully I'm answering your question, Len, that yeah, it's very important to me, mental health. It's important that my managers understand that employees are people and we need to show them some grace. Oftentimes show them some grace. And oftentimes an employee just isn't doing the job, right? And they're on a performance plan and we have to manage them out of the company, unfortunately. And there are times that we do that, but I think we do that with kid gloves. I would hope so anyway.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about isn't really business as usual, even though it's foundational to business. Obviously, you exemplify that in your behaviors. How have you supported your team, or certainly your organization, to bring more of what you're talking about to their interactions?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Number one, we invited speakers in. And I'll give you an example. When we were going through, I would call the country went through a DEI phase. It may be slowing down a little bit, but I would say 4 or 5 years ago that diversity, equity, and inclusion was everywhere. We brought in speakers for that. We brought in speakers for mental health. Give our employee, I believe that a healthy employee is a happier employee, and a happier employee makes happier customers, 100%. And in sales, there's this old adage that if you smile on the phone, someone can tell. And most of the time, most of us know when someone is in a good mood on the other end of the phone. That's important in today's world. It's important because sometimes we're not only on the phone, we're on Zoom. And so people can see your mood. And so it's important that your employees feel good. And so we have brought in speakers, number one. We literally have speakers that come in probably once every 4 or 5 months on various topics: mental health, getting healthier physically. Every year during open enrollment, which is another important thing for me, I stress very heavily to my employees to understand what benefits you have. because most of our benefits you need at the worst possible time. Your tooth hurts, you get sick and hurt, and God forbid you need to go to a hospital, and now you have to understand your benefits. So every single year we bring in our benefit specialists to talk about all of the benefits they have and how to use them, when to use them. Hopefully I'm answering that question.
Yep.
We support it a lot. We also have get well programs. We have physical programs. We promote walking every day. We promote a lot of philanthropy and days off for philanthropy as well, which I think giving back makes people feel good in the grand scheme of things. And the more you give, the less you think about yourself. And so all of that I think is combined, and we do a lot of that.
Good. Thanks.
Mark, I have a question, and this is on the mental health. You said you see a therapist. You said it's helped you, it's helped your family. There are still leaders out there who think, yeah, I'm not doing that. Can you talk about how that work, what I like to call the mirror work, you're doing the mirror work, working on you. Can you talk about how has that helped your business? As if maybe in that answer, someone who's listening, who's thinking, I don't need that stuff, might be, at least you might plant a seed that would sprout into, okay, so not only it will help me and my family, but if it'll help my business, then there's some ROI and it might be something I look into.
Sure, you bet. I'll start with something personal. My father was one of those people. My father doesn't believe in therapy. You get down, rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. Just walk it off. Or, he's just not a big believer in that. And so I dealt with that my entire life. I'll start on the easy stuff. Most of us know what we're good at, right? So I'm a pretty decent public speaker. I know that. I'm outgoing. I'm pretty good off the cuff, that kind of thing. I know numbers pretty well. I know our marketplace pretty well. Oftentimes we know what we're not good at, but we don't spend a lot of time there. And I'm going to tell a really brief story. About 23 or 4 years ago, I had a boss. I was in a meeting with my peers, and we were bouncing ideas off each other. And a gentleman, one of my peers brought up an idea, and I'm like, that's not going to work. That's a stupid idea. And we moved on. At the end of the meeting, my boss at the time pulled me aside outside of the meeting and said, I have to share some feedback. Most of the time, 99% of the time, your opinion is really spot on, but boy, your delivery is horrible. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, if you were John, who said that idea, and the first thing you do is say, that's not a good idea, that stinks. Well, immediately you're making him feel bad and you're putting him on the defense. And you could have said, well, I appreciate where you're coming from. I think this might work better. So she actually gave me a few ideas on how to change my approach. And I will tell you, this is no word of a lie. 3 times a week for the last 23 or 24 years, I have thought about that conversation. It has actually improved my ability to communicate with people. So that's one small example. Now, that's not mental health. That's just working on ourselves. But I use that as an example because there are things about myself that seeing a therapist pulled out of me that I could see and change in myself to become, this sounds so altruistic, but a better person, right? Either a better communicator, a better father, a better husband, a better boss. Empathy is a prime example. It's tough to be empathetic in lots of situations. I learned a lot about empathy, and I learned empathy through my therapist. And so now when an employee does have an issue, I put myself in their shoes. If you lose a grandparent, for people who aren't close to their grandparents, they don't know what that means. I have employees that their grandparents live with them. Well, you lose a grandparent, that's like losing a mom or a dad or a sibling. Mm-hmm. So I've learned to empathize way more than I ever did. And that's a direct result of therapy, for example. And I think it shows in the way I interact with our employees, the way I interact with my employees, the way employees view me. Again, I think that the CEO sets a culture of an organization without a doubt. Mm-hmm. And the softer or the more compassionate and the more empathetic you are to people, that permeates throughout the walls of the company. I believe that. And I believe your employees become, we use the term sticky. I want my employees to be sticky to the company. I don't want them to leave, even for more money, even for a better opportunity. Sometimes they'll say, you know what, I really like the culture here. Like, this is a really fun place to work. And I might make $1 more over there, but this is really a fun place to work and you care about us. That is where that is there's no cost to that, right? That's the dream come true for every boss.
Right.
A long-winded answer, sorry, but I think
No, it's good.
I weaved my way there.
Great. That's good stuff. It's good stuff.
I'll throw in a couple other things. So most of the employees see that I literally walk every day when the weather permits for about 10 or 12 minutes, 10, 12, 15 minutes every single day, literally every day. I leave the office. It's at various times. Sometimes it's because I'm working on something so hard that I literally just need to get away from it. It's like doing the crossword puzzle and stepping away, right? Like you get stuck on a word and then you have to leave it and come back. Sometimes it's I'm getting shoulder taps throughout the day. We call it, brief interruptions, shoulder tap. Sometimes it's literally so I can just go outside and not get a shoulder tap. I need 10 or 15 minutes just to myself. Sometimes I take a call from a customer and maybe I got riled up. Maybe it was something that I didn't enjoy. And so I need just to calm down and not interact with an employee because I'm not in a good mindset. And many of employees have asked me, number one, have asked me if they could join me. And I said, as long as you give me my time, it's fine to walk with me. And many of my employees I have found do the same thing now. They're taking that 10 or 15 minutes. Again, back to it has improved. I would say it's our results. We've done, I'm knocking wood, we've done really well for the last number of years. And I believe part of that is due to some of this for sure.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a time working with a lot of executives in a global tech company, and the tech companies move fast. That culture was built to move fast. And we challenged their executives, about 185 executives, to take a 15-minute walk every day and report back to us what they thought about that.
Awesome.
And they did that for a month, and the results were staggeringly positive. And so now, and oftentimes they would say, well, I just don't have any white space. I don't have any white space. Well, they didn't have any reason necessarily to control their schedules. Their executive administrator often controlled their schedules. So that changed as well. But it speaks to exactly what you're talking about. And the thing that fascinates me about that is how you have your managers be okay with that. I mean, you're the CEO, right?
Yep.
They're managing who knows how many people, 20, 25 in a company of your size. How does the employee know and implement, like, this is a time that I need to step away?
Well, we did something really, it's a good question. We're a little bit, we aren't traditional, that's for sure. One of the things I did when I took over the company is for management and above, C-level staff, we didn't accrue PTO. You could take as much time or as little time as you wanted, because I actually found that most C-suite people don't take time. We actually encouraged it. You need to take some time. We did that with our employees as well. We had people that were banking hours. We literally came out and said, not only should you be taking it, not only because, it's a use it or lose it at some points in time, right? You can't carry over all of your hours. But I think for your own benefit, just to step away from work. So that was PTO. During the day, even our hourly employees, we are a little bit, we allow, I have to be careful here because I'm sure we'll get some employees that are listening, but we do allow the flexibility of, hey, if you went to lunch for an hour and 15 minutes today, as long as it's not a habit, we're people, right? You have a doctor's appointment at 9:30 in the morning, go to your doctor's appointment. We're not going to manage to the minute. You're an adult. This is a job. Things happen. You have to go to the dentist. You have to go to the doctor. You have to get a flu shot. Go do your things, come back to work. And as long as you're getting the job done and there's a reasonable explanation for an absence, and if that absence is, I needed 15 minutes to clear my head so I didn't knock the guy next to me to, give him a shoulder tap or something, then you have to do it. And we're pretty loose about that in the office. And quite frankly, I think it shows in our results.
Yeah, that's great. If you go back to leading and managing in today's world with things moving so quickly, I'm curious about, and this is for the CEOs that are listening, I meet a lot of CEOs who actually get as caught up in getting things done, kind of the way you describe what a manager's role is. that they're much more in the management, complaining about their schedule, not tracking trends, being visionary, looking out ahead, which the company needs some people to do. Um, any advice for how you manage your schedule or set your priorities as a CEO?
Yeah,
With so much on your plate.
great question. First of all, the first thing I would say to anyone that leads people, anyone that either manages or leads people, are you delegating enough?
Great.
Oftentimes, the biggest hiccup is ourselves,
Yep.
because we feel the need to oversee everything. Especially, I see that in really small businesses where it might be an owner operator who starts to grow, and they do things a certain way and expect everyone to do it that way. And when an employee doesn't do it that way, they start to hold things up. Well, no, you really got to do it like this. There are 10 ways for me to drive to work. One might be the fastest, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go the fastest every day.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that the only way I go is the right way to go. So the first thing I would tell you, and it's a chapter in the book actually, is able to, want to, allowed to. If you ask those three questions of any of your employees, every employee has to have all three of those things. They have to be able to, meaning they have to have the ability. That also means they have to have the tools. They have to have the right software. They have to have a calculator. They have to have whatever they need to get their job done. They have to have a drill. They have to have a hammer. Whatever that job is, they have to be able to do the job. They have to be willing, and that's the one that's on the employee's responsibility. They have to be willing to get out of bed and go to work and do the work. And then they have to be allowed to. And oftentimes, that's the hiccup. Either we haven't given them the tools and made them able to, or we're not allowing them or empowering them to make the decisions. So we're holding ourselves back. So I did this years ago. This was a lesson that a mentor told me. He said, I took a calendar, and every 15 minutes of the day, he had me write down what I was doing for 2 full days. Literally every 15 minutes on a calendar, I had to write down what I was doing. And he said, you're going to notice at the end of 2 days, you have a lot of fluff in there. You either have a lot of fluff that you think you're working and you're not, or there's a lot of stuff that you shouldn't be doing that you should delegate to someone else. And he was right. The minute you start allowing people or empowering people to make some decisions and even make mistakes, you'll find some free time. We always make time for the things that we want. Generally speaking, we make time for the things that we want. But it takes an effort. For sure, it takes an effort. And oftentimes it's easy to say, oh, it's my company. I need to see everything. And before anything walks out the door, I have to stamp my approval. Ooh, that's going to be a challenge as your company grows, without a doubt. I can say that to any small business. If you are the person that's stamping everything, your business won't be able to grow. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So what
So
I'm
that's how
hearing is that you have to let go of some things, right?
You bet.
You have to know that your employees are able, willing, and you've allowed them to, but you as the CEO have to be willing to let go of controlling everything.
Yeah. You have to find the right people and put confidence in them to do the job. I have a chief information officer, chief IT person. He's been with me for a number of years, has moved across the country with me. I can tell you, I don't know the first thing about computers. I don't know anything about servers. And we're in the financial industry that gets hacked a lot. We have to have security and we do cyber testing. And what he says we need to do, we do it. I hired him to do the job. I don't butt in. I treat every department the same way. I hire experts to do it. And I'll touch on something else. I hire people that are way better than me. They make me look really good. I want people to do a great job. I want my marketing person to be the best marketing person in the world, even though I think I'm a really good marketer. I want them to way outshine me. Now I have the confidence to let them do their job. And when they're coming to me, it's either out of an opinion or a direction. Which direction do we want to go?
That's
It's
great.
good.
So to me, that exemplifies a high level of trust
Yeah.
Yes.
as a foundation for your company.
Yeah. Trust is, if you can't trust the people you're with, and Patrick and I have done a lot of work on this. In fact, we worked on this for a number of years. Patrick consulted with our company. If you can't trust the people that you have surrounding you, it's going to hurt the company at some point in time. It may not today. It's got a tail on it. It might not today. But if there's concern that people are talking about each other, or this person doesn't, if you can't air your grievances, it's like a relationship at home. If you can't air your grievances, it's going to come up. Resentment is going to bubble up somewhere. And that's not a healthy emotion to have. And it happens frequently at work because people work closely together. They're afraid of hurting someone's feelings, or they don't have the tools to express it in a nice way. Hey, Patrick, you did something the other day that kind of hurt my feelings, or I didn't feel good about it, and I need to share it with you. If you can't do that with your staff and the people that you surround yourself with, it's going to cause a problem at some point in time. So yeah, trust is a big one for me.
Yeah,
you bet.
Yeah, Mark, going back to when we worked together, we started working together before the pandemic.
Yep.
And then that hit, and I remember in the early. I want to tie the pandemic and remote work into mental health, because I know you are at this point a big advocate, but I also remember like a whole lot of, you could almost say like every CEO in the world at the very start of the pandemic, the question was, how are we going to get our work done remotely? How are we going to make sure people are working? How are we going to get through this? How long is it going to be? What does the policy need to look like? I was in the room with you as you and your team were trying to create this. And Lev has talked about it on some of our previous shows. Some of the clients he worked with, those early policies were very fear-based, right? Like, it's all about how do we make sure people are working and they're not taking advantage. But now fast forward through the pandemic, the toll on mental health. Like, I've just seen the journey you've been on the last handful of years, really becoming mental health advocate. How does the flexibility of remote work, how does that correlate or impact mental health? And I said it because just the other day I saw an article that there's now data, there are surveys showing that the return to work policies are causing the top performers to leave. Not everybody, they're causing the top performers to leave because you get a taste of it. It's kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle. So it's kind of a complex question, but I'm curious what your journey was, because even now you work remotely quite a bit.
I do. Remote work definitely has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
And I will also say there are many positions in a company that remote work just does not work. If you are a retail organization, customer focused, obviously, right? You have to be there. There are certain benefits from working on a team where you can physically sit next to that person. We have a phone team that answers questions all day long on product. And we offer a lot of products, 400 products easy that we offer. And they're all very similar products. And so I don't expect every person to know every in and out of 400 products. But so each person is a subject matter expert on several, right? And so if you're sitting right next to the person who's a subject matter on a product that you just got a question on that you don't know, there's a benefit from the person sitting right next to you in the cube right next to you.
Sure.
So there are positions that it just, unfortunately, you can't have that leeway. I do believe there are a lot of positions. And what's interesting, I'll use the insurance business as a prime example. There's someone that's called an underwriter in insurance, and it happens in property and casualty insurance and life insurance, someone that takes a look at all the information on an application and makes some determinations. Well, all day long, they look at application. They're working on paper. And the insurance business has had at-home underwriters for years, literally years, because they found that they got way more work done at home than they did in the office. That's where, during the pandemic, we were all forced to. What we decided on the way back was there are certain positions that it just makes sense to have at home. So we really left it up to the manager of the department. So back to lead versus manage, right? I want you to manage your department to maximize efficiency, to maximize output, to maximize retention of your employees. And I'm adding that specifically because if you just focus on output, you're going to burn everyone out, right? I can tell people to make 500 phone calls a day. They can't sustain that, although that's a lot of output. You can't sustain that. I want sustained growth, which means I have to have healthy, happy employees. And if that means working a few days at home to get the job done, then let's do that. And that's what ultimately we did with a lot of positions.
Mhm.
I also don't want to make light of competition. There are certain positions within every company, and I'll globally, I'll tell you that IT is a challenge for everyone, because a lot of IT people, specifically programmers, do work from home and can work from home. And that's the carrot people are waving oftentimes to my employees. Hey, if you're not working from home and you're making X, we got a job for you now. And so there, I think that what we did, although not traditional, we allowed our departments to make some decisions on as who could be remote. And then we also brought some people in and said, hey, this is the department that, quite frankly, does have to be here. And that's the expectation. But again, I'll go back to overall, it's how you manage your business, and that's how you manage your employees and how your employees feel about work and how they feel physically, right? And all of that's combined in that question. So I wish there was a golden answer that I could say, yep, we do this and this is the perfect scenario. There isn't one. But I think the world did change for a lot of people, and it has changed a lot. But I do believe there is a benefit from being in the office. There's a culture for your company. And the biggest challenge, I will say, COVID did bring, and Patrick, you and I talked about this a lot. Maintaining a culture when your employees are all separated and at home is incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Team building goes out the window. It's just very difficult to have a culture when everyone's sitting at home. So there are a lot of benefits of working in the office, and I don't want to pretend that there are not.
Sure. Yeah. To your point, there still is no silver bullet that solves this for everybody everywhere. It's a complex issue.
Yep. And interestingly enough, we still have employees that wanted to come in every day, even during COVID, crazy enough. But we have employees that are in departments that could work from home, and they decide to come in. They like the culture. They like to get away. They feel they're more disciplined away. And I will add, and discipline's an interesting topic. We could talk a whole day on discipline, but working from home for me, you do have to be disciplined. Yeah. I get up at the same time every day. I take a shower and get dressed as if I'm going to work. It's easy I could sit down in a t-shirt and sweatpants for sure. 2/3 of my calls are still telephonic, right? I get up, I get dressed, I take a shower, I get dressed, I come into the office at the same time, I take my lunch at the same time. So there is a discipline. I'm a little bit of a rigid person, but there is a discipline from working at home. And it is very easy to say, oh, I'm going to run to Target for 10 minutes. Well, you're on the company clock, right? And so there is that relaxed creep that can come in. So it does take people to be really honest with themselves. Do you have the environment at home to work at home? Do you have screaming kids? Do you have pets? You still have to put in your time and do the work. And it does take a disciplined person to do that.
Yeah. I completely understand, because recently Leb moved to Hawaii and his performance has dropped off a cliff.
Looking at that view, I'm sure.
Ago, Mark. That's a fast drop.
For sure.
Leb, looked like you had a question.
Yeah, I have one other question as we kind of wrap up. Globalization now is a part of almost every organization's culture. And I'm just wondering if you, I'll give you the quick story. As I was in a company once where in 2016, where people started to realize that their colleagues were going to vote one way and other colleagues were going to vote in another way in the presidential election. And it created quite a ruckus. Yep. And, so here we are, there's globalization, and there's also people who have grandparents or parents who came from other countries, and they're there working with you in whatever your location is. And there's a lot of things going on in the world. There's a lot of war right now. Yep. Do you address that? Do you ask your managers to allow for people to, and tying it back to mental health and just being real, that we're in a world that with remote work and everything else, is inundated with so much information, so much data. So
Very, very,
such,
very confusing
such
world.
speed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really fair question. Number one, I think we live in a really divisive time, especially in this country. And this past election, you were either on one side or the other. Even my own personal family and holidays can be. We have people on both sides of the aisle, and so that made it interesting. And you're right. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and a lot of people have opinions about what's happening in the world. We attempt. I was taught years ago, when you're ever at any function, don't talk sex, politics, or religion.
Right.
I do attempt to live by that. There are things, there are things that are still personal. Unfortunately, we live in a world today where it's more difficult to learn how to talk to people when you disagree. I would like to think that we're all adults and civil enough to be able to have a conversation even when we disagree. But for a lot of people, that's difficult. Generally speaking, we tend to stay away from that. No one needs to know my opinion. It doesn't change the way I run the company, whether I voted for the left or the right. It might have financial implications to the company for sure, which administration is in the company. We're a very heavy regulated industry. And depending on the administration, we could have more or less. So I might talk about, hey, there might be some new legislation that may pass if this administration gets in. But I'm not voicing an opinion. I'm voicing a concern that could possibly happen. Right. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. And so we attempt to do that at the office. I respect everyone's opinion. One of the wonderful things about our country is you get to have it and you get to voice it. That doesn't mean that work is always the right place to voice it. And so we do tend to ask people to at work, you're at work, and a lot of your personal opinions about what's happening in the world don't necessarily need to be at work.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
It's tough because there are a lot of opinions, and some of it actually it can lead to religion. It can lead to which way lots of very, very touchy topics for lots of people. And I do believe that work isn't the place to address those things. Go out to lunch with your employees and have that conversation, with your friends that are at the office and have that conversation. We would prefer not to do it at work.
Yeah. It's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had one more question. I'll turn it over to my colleagues for their final question, and we'll wrap up with it. Let's get practical. Mark, what I know about you, you shared something with me. I want to say it was earlier this year, kind of a new mantra that, if I may, you and your wife have embraced something called "No More Wasted Days."
Yep.
Can you talk about that? It was profound when simple, right? Sometimes the profoundness is in the simplicity. But just a good reminder, because you're a busy CEO, right?
Yep.
You run a multi-billion-dollar company, 150 employees, travel a lot, family at home, a lot of people pulling at you, right? Podcast, you're on the Forbes Council, author, speaker. Why no more wasted days?
Yeah. So we had a health scare. My wife and I were at the airport. We were literally, if you know the Atlanta airport, there's the plane train that you have to take to all the gates. We're standing, we already checked our luggage. We were standing down at the train, and my wife looked at me and said, "I don't feel right." And she started to slur her words. And we thought she was having a stroke. Long story short, she did not. It was actually a blessing. We ended up going to the hospital. Long story short, we found that she had an aneurysm in her brain. It wasn't that day, so we don't know when it happened, but so we found it, and she had surgery because of it, and now everything's fine. But we had one of those holy cow moments that this could have been a lot worse than it ended up. And my wife came up with I don't know where she read the phrase, but she said, "You know what? No more wasted days. This could happen at any time to anyone." And so, yeah, we say it a lot to ourselves, probably 4 or 5 times a week. We have decided to make certain decisions because of that. If we're putting something off that we really want to do, we do it now. hey, let's do it. No more wasted days. Now, that doesn't mean we're not planning for the future, but I travel a lot. I won't miss, if there's something, an event for my kids, for example, I won't miss it anymore. No more wasted days. Work is there. We'll get it done. So it has, now, not everything, right? There are some priorities. Work still is important, and we have jobs to do, but overall, it really has made a dent in how we live. It's made a mark on us, to really think about, you're not given every day. And so if you have it, if you wake up on this side of the grass, take advantage of it. So Len, thrilled for you that you're in Hawaii. You had an opportunity to watch someone's home. God bless you. Do some work over there and take advantage of it. That's the kind of thing that I may have passed on before. Wow, I can't do some work from, however many thousands of miles away that is. But now, you know what, it can be done. So let's figure out a way to do it. So yeah, it really has, it's a nice, it's been a nice, I'll call it like this glow that we have about no more wasted days. And it's very simple. And we say it to each other, again, either easily 3, 4, 5 times a week. And I think it's nice. We actually have a plaque. Thank you very much. We have a plaque that is in our bedroom that says "No More Wasted Days." So we are reminded of it almost daily.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah. Looking at my colleagues, any final questions or comments for Mark, or should we?
After that, I think it's a wrap. That's like you just put the bow on the podcast.
There you go.
All right, good. Well, Mark, so this is the part. What we have kind of a mantra: no more wasted podcasts.
Yep.
Right. Like, you can't just listen and not do something with whatever it is. I just made that up. Not do something with the things that we've talked about. Change comes from doing, not from listening. So as you think about, what are some, what are 2 or 3 tips, big pieces of advice that you would have for a CEO or a senior leader that, whether in any of the areas that we talked about today, mental health or leading and not managing, and no more wasted days. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll start with, and I'll touch on some of the things that we talked about. I'll touch on, first of all, if you don't track it, don't do it. It's something I learned early on. Imagine going on a diet and not weighing yourself. If it's important at work, then track it. That includes performance. That includes sales. Whatever your industry is, I think it's important to track things. The second is know your strengths and know your weaknesses. You really do have to know who you are, what you're good at, and what you're not good at. And what you're good at, try to do more of that. And what you're not, find someone else that is. Delegate that off. Listen, there's a reason why I'm not a finance major. I understand a spreadsheet. I understand our income statement, but I'm not doing the books. I find people to do that. I mentioned before, I'm not an IT person. I'm lucky to turn on my computer at certain days. Find people that are better than you. I can't tell you how many times I have gone to company presentations where they choose the worst speaker. They're the most knowledgeable person at the company, so they choose him to speak, and that person is a horrible speaker. Well, if you know it, sit down, let someone else present. So really know who you are, what and what you're not. And then finally, I would say lead with empathy. Living isn't easy for everyone. Life is tough and everyone goes through tough times. And if you keep that in mind, I think you'll be a better leader. So I would say lead with empathy. It's important, and it's important for people to know that you're that kind of leader. I think it has served me well.
I love it.
I keep asking, are you delegating enough?
Yeah.
It's, I think it's really important, and especially for the leaders and managers who might be listening to this podcast. It's a great question to live into. Avoid a 24/7, got to be on performance expectation. It impacts mental health, but it actually ultimately, in the long run, impacts performance and brings it down. Since we all need grace from time to time, ask, am I giving grace to others? I have a whole lot more, but I'll pass it back and maybe
love
I'll
it.
get one more in at the end.
Yeah, we'll go around again. Patsy, what do you got?
Mark, you talked a lot about leading and managing at the C-suite, but even when we have responsibilities where we lead part of the time and manage part of the time, I think it's a very important distinction. Leading being the direction and the vision, managing is getting the daily stuff done. I loved that leadership is a behavior.
Yeah.
Some of the things you mentioned is be interested in your people, live your core values, not just have core values, but know what they are, know how to live by them in your organization. And the last one I'll say is the CEO sets the culture of the organization and therefore can create a culture that attracts employees and creates stickiness.
For sure.
Good. All right, I'll add a few and then open it up, see if anybody has any more they want to add. Mark, you talked about sustained growth requires healthy and happy employees. So you might be able to push short-term productivity spikes, but that may come at the cost of long-term sustainability. Really, it's the people who are the ones that are going to help you execute. I love, it's kind of a prevailing theme. Just Mark, as I know, as you have grown, you run a very successful organization, and so listener, as you work on you, as you grow, as you learn and develop, and that includes mental health, that includes physical health, getting out and moving. As you do that, not only do you grow, not only does it benefit your family or your immediate relationships, it will benefit your business. That's just, and Mark, you're another in a long line of CEOs who has said that. So there's a listener who's not doing it. It's time to do. I just love this reminder. Maybe this is maybe this aligns, Mark, with what you said earlier about like leading with empathy. But remember that your employees are people. You said, right? Your employees are people, and sometimes you need to give them a break, which means you need to get to know them, right? You need to learn about them in order to understand what they're going through and give them a break. You have to invest the time in building the relationship so you can understand what that is. And then the last one I'll add, just because I brought it up because it resonates with me, is live by a mantra like no more wasted days, right? Work is there and you'll get it done, but live as if you're not guaranteed every day, because you're not. Oh.
Yeah, I'll sum up with this, and I literally just heard this in the last 2 weeks, and I love it, and I'm trying to live by it. Someone, and I was listening to someone's podcast actually, and it was a guest on the podcast, and he was talking about manifestation and how to make things happen in your life. And he said, if you try to wake up every day and say you're going to help one person every day, he said, you can't imagine how your life will change. And it sunk in, it stuck with me. It's very difficult to do. And I have been attempting to do it now for about the last 10 days. It's very difficult to think about helping someone else every day, like a new person every day. But I'm attempting to do that. And what he said is that the minute you start focusing on someone else and taking the focus off yourself, you see the world differently. And I thought that was really interesting, especially from a leader's perspective. If you're attempting to make a customer's life better or an employee's life better, or even another company's situation better, you take the focus off yourself and people will see that. And so I'll end with that because I loved that, and I'll report back and let you know how it's working.
Awesome.
Excellent.
We have you on a third time.
Yes.
All right, listener. I mentioned Mark's book, Lead, Don't Manage. Look, it's I don't know if you're hearing this before Christmas or after Christmas, but rather than send a little pear basket or gift basket, right? Give your leaders a gift that will grow them and grow their people as they grow and develop. So right? They can find Lead Don't Manage on Amazon. They can buy it from your website, Mark, I believe, markwwilliams.com.
Yep.
They can absolutely learn more about you and mental health by tuning into your podcast, Your Mile May Vary. Your Miles
Yep.
May Vary.
Mileage may vary.
Um,
Yep.
But if somebody's interested in learning more about you or getting in touch with you, what's the best way?
MarkWWilliams.com for sure. LinkedIn, of course, or Brokers International. We have a 800 number, so you're more than welcome to call that as well. Pretty accessible. So please reach out. Love to chat.
And you are available for coming to you go around speaking and presenting on a lot of this stuff. So
You bet on lots of stuff. So yeah, I'd love to do that as well.
yeah. So Mark,
I'm not the greatest self promoter. So yes to all the above.
Yes.
And MarkWWilliams.com is probably the best place, easiest thing to remember.
Yeah. And I, again, first of all, we've had Mark on twice. Both episodes have been great. I've seen him speak. He is a dynamic presenter. He's fun. He's engaging. He's great with a crowd. So if you're looking for somebody to come talk to your team on leadership or any of the topics we've covered today or anything that Mark promotes on his website, reach out, be bold, do something different. So
Thanks very much.
See anything else for the good of the cause?
Nope.
Just big
Inspired.
Thank
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Just a big thank you, Mark. Mark, thank you for coming back to join us for another episode.
Thanks for having me. Always great to see everybody. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the time. It's so fun.
Of course. And listener, thank you for sticking with us to the end of another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. Connect with each of us co-hosts on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have ideas for future guests or future topics, reach out to us. You can find us on, actually you can find us at thelionsgroupconsulting.com, or you can reach us. You can direct message any of us through LinkedIn. So that's it. We'll see you next time on the Frustrated CEO podcast.